I'm Alec Baldwin, and you're listening to Marketing Trends and the Leads Aren't Weak.
Kate Huyett is the CMO of Bombas, which she says has two main identifiers.
The two main pillars that we've been focused on really steadily over the last 6 years are comfort and mission. The best for us is when someone puts our socks on their feet and they say, wow, these really are the most comfortable socks that I have ever put on. And I can feel great about wearing them because an item has been donated to somebody in need.
That second pillar of being mission-driven is rooted in the idea that brands can make a difference through the products they sell, especially if the products are of high quality. On this episode of Marketing Trends, Kate discusses what it means to be mission-driven and why your products need to be your guiding light. Plus, Kate touches on the importance of your overall portfolio succeeding and why podcast marketing was right for Bombas. Enjoy this episode. Marketing Trends Podcast is brought to you by Salesforce. We bring marketing and engagement together. Learn more at salesforce.com/marketing.
Welcome to Marketing Trends. I'm Ian Faison, host of Marketing Trends, and today we are joined by special guest, Kate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am super excited to talk to you about Bombas because I wear them all the time and my fiance wears them all the time, and they're by far and away the best socks that she's ever owned. And I hear it all the time. So we love the company and we're excited to learn about that and your background. So how did you get started in marketing in the first place?
Yeah. So when I first started my career, I actually was not in marketing. I started in finance and did two different jobs in finance. And the second one, I was actually covering consumer retail and healthcare companies. So places like Walmart, Target, McDonald's, Starbucks were my clients, and was always really interested in sort of how they talked about operating their businesses and thought it would be fun to move to the operating side. And so in 2010, I took the leap to a tiny startup that had enough money to do some paid marketing, but not enough money to hire someone who really knew what they were doing. But because I had that analytical skill set from finance, the founders thought I was the best person of the handful of non-engineers in the company to take over performance marketing. And so over the course of the 4 years that I was with that company, I grew the marketing budget pretty meaningfully. We were really focused on growing at a certain ROI, and grew from basically just search ads to a true multi-channel marketing team, small team, about 4 or 5 people by the time I left. And then once I was in, I just really loved the combination of being analytical and being able to really think through customer psychology.
So flash forward to today. Tell me about what it means to be CMO of Bombas.
Yeah. So it's actually structured a little bit differently than it is at a lot of more consumer-driven brands. It's a little bit probably more in line with a head of growth role.
Sure.
2 of our co-founders have a really strong background in brand and creative. And so the brand and creative piece actually doesn't live under me. But what I am responsible for is acquisition marketing. So all of our paid ad spend, retention marketing. So everything we're doing to increase business from repeat customers and engage our existing loyal customer base, as well as our digital product team. So the site experience itself. And then the teams that oversee our data and analytics function for the entire company, as well as the customer insights function for the entire company. So it's a really fun role because it allows me to think much more holistically across the customer journey.
So obviously Bombas is, a social enterprise in the sense that you have a really cool mission, you have a really cool purpose. It is one of the things that we love about buying the socks. And by the way, I should clarify the reason why I say that Bombas is not my number one sock in the world is not because you're not tied neck and neck. It's the fact that right now it's just so hot outside that my Bombas socks are just a little too hot, so I'm not wearing socks at all. But great for hiking, great for any type of sport or athletic stuff, or just great for every day. I'm just a huge fan, but also the social component to it is really cool. So can you talk about what does it mean to market that type of, that philanthropic model as well?
Yeah. So first of all, if it's too hot for our thicker socks, we do sell lightweight no-shows that are our thinnest, smallest sock and can work even in high heat.
Okay, well, okay, all right, I'll check them out. Okay, noted.
But in terms of marketing around the mission, I mean, mission is absolutely core to who we are, and it's actually one of the biggest reasons that I joined the company. I'd been a huge fan of Patagonia for a long time and really respected and admired the way that they sort of built their company around a really specific social purpose, and that was something that I sort of always aspired to be able to do. And I would say it's not just, we don't, exclusively market around the mission. We really live our mission. So from, I was the second employee at Bombas, and from really early on, when we were smaller, the entire company would, head down from our office to the Bowery mission and take a few hours to serve soup and hand out socks. And for a really small company to do that is a pretty big statement. We didn't just ship the socks off to people and then not ever see where they went. We really engaged with the community as a team from day one, and also really engaged with our giving partners around the design of our donation products. So it's something that that's really threaded through the entire ethos of the company and everything we do. And so in turn, when we think about talking about that externally to customers or potential customers, it's really just sharing part of our origin story. So Bombas was founded because the founders saw that socks were the number one most requested clothing item in homeless shelters. And it was around the time Tom's was big. And so they thought, if that 1-for-1 model can work for shoes, maybe that can also work for socks. And so, for our entire existence, for every item purchased, a specially designed item is donated to the homeless community. And we've donated more than 35 million items since we got started. And we have more than 3,500 giving partners across the entire country.
Well, and it's a huge logistical challenge too, right? I mean, it's not just to say something like not to be, to be, I guess, flippant about it, but it's to say, well, if we had just donated that same amount of money versus actually, going through the effort of doing the work, it's the harder thing to do, right? Is to actually find a home for those socks.
Yeah. But it's also though, so it's a small team of people that manages that part of our organization. So we have a small team of people that's focused just on distributing product to our giving partners and maintaining communication with giving partners. But honestly, we get so much from those relationships, and we learn so much about the community that we serve through our partners and through that direct volunteering that I mentioned.
Well, and so since you started at such an early time in the company, obviously you've seen the marketing, change a ton. You've seen the different channels and strategies and things. Mm-hmm. But what's the scope of where Bombas is at right now in terms of market reach and scope and scale of the organization?
Yeah. So we're coming up on 150 employees or so. So up from 2, when I started about 6 years ago. So pretty significant employee growth. In terms of marketing, at least on the paid side, I like to joke that we added a channel a year and a person a year to the performance marketing team. We were incredibly focused with how we rolled out marketing channels. So it wasn't quite a channel a year, but we really, as a small team with a really small, initially it was just me. I was literally in, the Facebook ads interface and the Google ads interface personally for quite some time at the beginning. But we had a pretty limited budget. We were really committed to growing profitably. And so when you have that situation, we really had question number 1 was, can we advertise profitably, period, right? And then question 2 was, okay, where are the best places where we're going to have a shot at doing that? And then we sort of systematically identified those places and worked through them. But we would sort of prove one out before moving on to the next, because especially as a really small bootstrapped company, one of the easiest things to do is to lose focus and to try to do too many things. And then you're not really sure which thing worked. And also you're not really able to invest your best in what you're focused on. So that approach, over time now has really gotten us to a true, multi-channel marketing approach. The performance marketing team specifically is 6 people, a number of sort of dedicated channel managers. And then we've built out a data and analytics team. And one of the things that team has really supported on is understanding attribution.
Yeah. So can you go in a little bit further on that then? Like what types of new data channels are you tapping into? How have your data sources increased? Like, this is one of the things that obviously every marketer is trying to figure out. And especially now it's getting increasingly complex.
Yeah. So we've been pretty focused about adding different data sources to the mix as we have them. We generally are using first-party data, so we've not historically bought much third-party data and leveraged that in our marketing, but we do obviously collect data from a large number of different sources, depending on the partner. That might be an off-the-shelf integration or a custom integration. But something that we added recently into our mix was a customer data platform to help us, I guess, really better leverage the data that we were already collecting. And that's been a really helpful tool for the team.
Yeah, in the Salesforce report that came out, something like in 2019, the median number of data sources used by marketers was 8, and now it's projected to be like 12. Which you're talking, it's like levels of complexity higher.
Yeah.
How do you kind of take that stuff and make actionable insights? Like how does that shape your spend?
So a couple of different things. So we look at each channel on a standalone basis. So we try to understand this channel by itself. How is it looking week over week, year over year, month over month? What are the key trends that we're seeing inside of this channel? But the other thing that we've done a lot from day one, because I've seen this be something that people forget to look at, is really pay attention to what the overall portfolio performance is. So, it doesn't matter if every channel thinks they're doing really, really well. If the overall return on ad spend is poor, obviously something is wrong somewhere. And so we've been really focused on making sure that the overall portfolio performs best. And it's really clear to everyone at the channel manager level that, improving our understanding of the attribution of that channel is part of the job for that channel manager. But we really want to make sure that it's not an environment where, we have 100, let's say we have 100 conversions and everyone's like fighting tooth and nail to divvy up those 100 conversions. We'd rather have the team as a whole really focused on, okay, how do we grow those 100 conversions to 200, 500, 1,000? So that's sort of philosophically how we approach it. And then obviously on the data and analytics side, we built out a multi-touch attribution system, and we're starting to get into the world of media mix modeling as well. But we're a bit too early there to talk much about it beyond that.
Switching gears a little bit towards more of the product side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there was somebody out there who maybe knew about Bombas, a little bit, but had never tried the socks before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somebody like our producer Hillary, who maybe needs some pairs because she doesn't know what she's missing out on. How do you go about your all's persona and figuring out how to craft the right message? Because for something like, I know for me, when we were first trying them,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of the moment of your life where you're like, I'm just so sick of these like crappy socks that you've had for years and years and years. And I know for my fiance, it was something where I was like, you need actual socks that like wick moisture away. And like, we're going like camping and doing all this crazy stuff. But I think for a lot of people, they're like, they just don't want to either like spend the money to get a pair of nice socks or a couple pairs of nice socks. And I'm just curious, like, what do you think about for messaging?
Yeah. So the two main pillars that we've been focused on, really steadily over the last 6 years are comfort and mission. And so I think for most people, socks are more of a functional item than a comfort item. And so reframing it to, socks can be one of the most comfortable things that you wear, I think is already sort of gets to that shift that you're thinking about. And then the mission, is something that differentiates us and that people remember. And so I think those two things have been really both quite important. And when we talk to our existing customers about why they came to us and what compelled them to give us a try, they're the two things we talk about the most, but it's still reassuring to see them reflected, and that's the most likely reason that people come to us. Predominantly our customer base is people that are coming to Bombas from lower quality products versus people who are switching from other, more premium brands, although obviously we do have we do have a bunch of both, but the best for us is when someone puts our socks on their feet and they say, wow, these really are the most comfortable socks that I have ever put on. And I can feel great about wearing them because an item has been donated, to somebody in need.
Well, I spent a decade in the Army, and so obviously socks at a premium. When you're doing that sort of stuff. No Bombas around when I was in the military, unfortunately. But yeah, in my experience, it was my sister, who's like an avid hiker and all that sort of stuff. She's like, these are great, and got them for Becky. And was like, you should try these out and check them out. And I think got one for me too for like Christmas a couple years ago. But the thing that's so crazy for me is like, you have this, as soon as you find something, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to go on and I'm just going to buy her 10 pairs because it's like, she's like, these are the best socks ever. So I'm just going to go buy. I'm like curious how many of those types of users you have that are like, oh, no, I'm never going back. Like I'm never going to have bad socks again.
Yeah. So first of all, we actually do a ton of work with veterans. Homelessness, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, is a huge issue in the veteran community. And so we do a lot of work distributing our donation socks to homeless veterans. But in terms of the product question, yeah, I mean, we hear so often, Bombas have ruined other socks for me. I've had to change over my whole drawer, or, I've started doing laundry more often because I can't wear the other socks. And so I just do laundry more often so I can wear them more often.
That's what we were doing. That's what it was like, I had 2 pairs of hiking socks, and then it's like you use them both. And it's like, if you go on a hike on a Friday and Saturday, Sunday, then you're out of luck.
Yeah.
You got to do laundry.
It's tough. Yeah. You just got to have more Bombas is the solution.
I know. I know. It's crazy. But so, as a marketer though, obviously this is something that like, I love when marketing has the opportunity to get into that moment where it's like a shift of lifestyle or a shift of behavior, or, kind of maybe you are making a little bit more money or whatever it is. And then it like is the perfect place for, I wouldn't say that you are a premium product. I don't know what you would say, but basically, a quality product that is like much better than the garbage that, you were used to wearing.
Yeah.
But like that mindset shift, like how do you get people to understand that versus like just the display ad, which is like, very much not explaining that shift?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And actually display, probably unsurprisingly, has been one of our, has been less of a focus for us. So, we did try to prioritize, especially early on, but even still today, we love ad formats where we're able to tell a bit more of our overall brand story and also explain a bit more about why the product is genuinely better than anything else you've put on your feet. And so, several years ago, Facebook video was absolutely massive for us. Over time, TV, OTT, and audio actually have all been really helpful because they're places that allow us to tell much more of that story.
Yeah. So I want to talk podcast advertising for a sec. Obviously, we love it here on Marketing Trends, but you all started really early.
Yeah.
In terms of your company growth into podcasts.
Yeah.
But it's a notoriously hard thing to track, especially starting off. So how did you do that?
Yeah. So we started really early, and we started early because of what I just mentioned. We felt like if we were able to get our product into the hands of podcast hosts and they actually experienced it, we felt like that their enthusiasm and excitement about the product would really carry through for their audiences, and podcast audiences, especially at the time, although I think this is still true, tend to be really loyal. And so there's an enormous amount of trust between the host and the audience. And so we really tried to work with hosts where we felt like they had a really genuine connection to the products that they were advertising, and where we felt like that came across in the read. And so that was really why we did it early. We were pretty active in the space for a while. Then we pulled back for a bit as it started to get more popular and prices really started to change, and it was harder. It was in the stage where we were scaling significantly more. And so it actually did become harder to track. Whereas at the beginning, we weren't spending so much in total. And so podcasts were much easier to see the impact of. But then as we started really scaling our marketing budget and it became more complex, it got harder. And then over, now we're sort of in a true multi-touch world. And so we're looking at how did you hear about us surveys. We're looking at coupon code usage, but it continues to be a pretty important part of our overall marketing mix.
Well, and one of the things that's fascinating to me about the podcast ecosystem right now is you have these like super players, right? You have like, New York Times Daily, Rogan, Pardon My Take, Bill Simmons and whatnot. These huge shows that are like everyday shows or, 3 times a week usually or daily or whatever it is, that have these like unbelievably massive distribution channels and now are extremely expensive because of, because of those things and price out a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then you have, these like almost like tiers of different types of advertisers. And one of the things that you mentioned, when we were talking before the interview is how you don't want your like what you personally follow or like in terms of a podcast to be how you advertise, right? It's you're like, oh, I love, whatever, New York Times Daily. It's like, that can't be the only channel that you go after because there's obviously lots of, Bombas customers that don't listen to that show, for example. So how do you think about like the tiers of advertising for that?
It's a really good question. So it's actually evolved a lot over time. So we're just constantly reevaluating, given where pricing is in the market and given sort of what's happening with the rest of our marketing channels, what should the mix be between, sort of those really huge audience shows versus smaller shows. And, depending on a number of different factors, at times we've skewed, more heavily to the bigger shows. At times we've skewed really heavily to really small podcasts. And so it's something we do move around on pretty consistently.
Well, and because I was thinking, that you all aren't the type of company who would have like a ton of new product releases.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that you had lightweight socks. So, apparently I wasn't keeping up with the Jones as much as I could have. But that's like the perfect example where, we have, again, like probably 15 pairs in our family, but I don't, I'm not in tune with the brand every day. I don't think I'm like a newsletter subscriber. I'm kind of like, okay, the wardrobe's set. And, when these, wear out, then we'll get new ones sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So how do you get things like, new product releases or is that where you would maybe use some of the bigger channels and pay up for that?
Yeah. So generally speaking, for acquisition, we tend to have a broader approach. So we tend to highlight in acquisition products that we think, most people will have a great use case for. And then we reserve the more targeted marketing or more product specific things like, for example, our tennis sock or our golf sock for retention and also for sort of more targeted marketing approaches with the specific communities that we think those products will resonate with. And so even though, last summer we did a huge campaign around no-shows as a general category for us, we wouldn't necessarily have highlighted lightweight no-shows in much more detail than that. We sort of rely on the broader no-show marketing to get people to the site, and then from there for them to look at the different no-show options, for example.
Interesting. Yeah, that's super fascinating. You obviously have a ton more products than you used to have.
Yes.
Than when you started out.
Yeah.
Which makes me think, I wonder how many, because we bought these a number of years ago. So I'm like, I wonder if I get some originals here. But as the number of products change, as the amount of complexity changes, how are you looking at like brand building type activities versus the more attribution based activities?
So it's a really good question. I would say, I mentioned earlier that in the founders, there's a really strong DNA of brand and creative. And as a sort of pure performance marketer at the time, that was something that really drove me pulled me to the company. I really wanted the opportunity to be exposed to brand thinking. And so actually from pretty early on, we've had a really good tension, I would say, between performance and brand, such that, with a few exceptions, that sort of sneak out occasionally, the performance assets that we're putting out into the world to market behind have a pretty strong brand element to them. Because we didn't want to have such a clear divide between performance and brand. And because we knew we were committed, from very, very early on to building profitably, we knew that every dollar that we put out, not only needed to bring in customers, but also really needed to build our brand. And so the sort of dedicated brand only marketing is something that we've really not, done a ton of yet. We really try to thread our brand story through everything that we do and really let customers experience our brand, as much as possible through every step of their journey.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way of looking at it, that every piece is about brand. Are there any channels that you have been using lately that are particularly interesting?
We've really started to do more with Snapchat over the last few months, which has been really fun. It's, a little bit of a different creative approach. It's a slightly, different demographic. So that's been quite fun. I'm pretty excited about, we're doing some testing and streaming audio at the moment, which is a space, we talked earlier about how interesting I think audio is generally. And then I continue to be really impressed actually with what's rolling out in Google's universe. So I would say over the last year, it seems like they've really invested a lot in building out just a ton of new ways to reach customers.
Do you have any favorite campaigns that you've ran over the years?
Yeah. So my favorite broader campaign that we did something called the Laundry Back Guarantee, which was, so we have in general 100% happiness guarantee, which means if we send you a product and for whatever reason you don't like it, it doesn't fit, et cetera, we'll make it right, whether that's a return, whether that's an exchange, whether that's, store credit, whether that's, we'll really, our customer happiness team is really dedicated. And so we always have this happiness guarantee, but we were one of the things that we always hear, obviously, Jerry Seinfeld famously has a joke about it, is that people lose socks in the wash all the time. And so we did a TV spot around, if you lose a sock in the wash, we'll replace it. And we called it the Laundry Back Guarantee. And it was really fun. It really hit on, kind of a silly customer pain point, but one that, is sort of immediately recognizable and got a good laugh out of people. And I think it was really fun because it hit on a core value prop of the brand, which is our customer happiness element, but also showcased sort of the fun, quirkier side of our brand that I think is also something that, really draws people to us.
Do you have any campaigns over the years that were maybe your biggest learning experiences or maybe that didn't go so well?
We did a TV spot with Dan Marino, and the pun that we were working with was that Bombas makes the best damn merino wool socks, but it sounds a lot when you say it quickly like Dan Marino. And so we filmed, what we thought was a great spot. Dan Marino was in it. He was just great. Obviously, he's a pro. And we put the spot out into the world, and it didn't resonate so much with customers, and it sort of failed one of the basic marketing 101s, which this is on me. But it didn't really explain the value prop. I mean, we kind of touched on why, but I think, having Dan Marino in the spot sort of over and trying to force this pun through, I think just made it a little too confusing for customers. And so it didn't really perform to where we had hoped it might.
So I think that's hilarious, but I am pretty familiar with merino wool.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine if you didn't know what that is,
yes,
you would be like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
But for anyone who's the hardcore sock shoppers out there are like, oh yeah, they have, better merino wool than anybody else. That totally makes sense. Huh. That's fascinating. That's a good one. I like that. Actually, so similar story or similar question on that. So something like merino wool, which is, a type of fabric that is perhaps maybe in and of itself, its own category, right? Like a marketing category that someone would be looking for merino wool socks specifically. And then you need to compete within that vertical rather than just searching for Bombas socks. But it's something that I feel like has come about in the last handful of years as, you see it everywhere now and it didn't necessarily used to be.
Yeah.
How do you think about those type of trends, whether it's certain types of something you all have a sweatpants line now. So it's competing with something like joggers, which are, very popular in terms of, very highly searched probably now as a search term or something. I'm just curious how you think about things like that.
In terms of how we think about marketing behind trends, I would say for the most part, we watch trends pretty closely, but we really try to have our own point of view around what we think makes sense for us as a brand. And we really only want to make best in class products. And so the reason, that we're in merino as opposed to other types of wool is that we really think merino allows us to give, good value. And it's really high. It's a really high quality material, but also not, it's more expensive than our cotton socks. But, within the, versus something like cashmere, merino is just kind of a better fit for our core customer. Obviously, it's really helpful having had other companies out there talking loudly about merino because it means we have less educating to do. But, we talked at the beginning of the podcast around our core pillars of comfort and mission. So when we talk about merino, we really talk about it through those lenses as opposed to through a lens of this is a trend that everyone's into and we're sort of piggybacking on that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, I think that's part of that we always talk about, that first mover disadvantage of having to inform the market of something, of why it is. But now you see it everywhere. I feel like, and you didn't used to see that. So what are some of the trends that you're following or that you're excited about from a marketing perspective going forward?
Yeah. So I'm really interested in changing behaviors around audio consumption, both on the music side and on the spoken word side, whether that's podcasts or things like Audible. I just think there's a ton of innovation happening there and also really pretty material shifts in customer behavior that I think are pretty interesting. I continue to be fascinated both personally and professionally by TikTok. And I'm very, very curious how a lot of the, let's call it overhead, plays out there. And then I'm really quite curious about how consumer behavior will change or not, in the wake of everything related to COVID. And then diversity and inclusion as it relates to marketing. So for diversity and inclusion, I would say in sort of online discussion, there's, predominantly a focus on sort of hiring and executive representation. And while I think that is really, really important, something that we're really excited about is starting to improve our diversity and inclusion in our marketing, whether that's through the agencies that we're using, through the production agencies that we're using, as well as obviously through the teams we're assembling, the models we're using. So that's something that we're really focused on and that I'm excited to see how that trend evolves over the next, several months or years.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like what changes did you all have to make? What were you all trying to figure out from a response perspective once the pandemic hit?
So I think one of the big things was that we talked much more about our mission than we had in the past. So we really saw a desire from our customers, a desire to help in their local communities. And so we've always done things like highlight our giving partners and talk about our mission, but we increased the frequency with which we were doing that. And we saw that our customers really responded to that information. And we saw like the open rates and the click-through rates on those emails were really, really high, which was kind of an amazing thing to see because obviously we talk about mission and I talked about how important it is in sort of the day-to-day life and operating aspect of the company, but to see it, in such a hard moment is something our customers also wanted to engage with more was pretty incredible. So that was probably the biggest shift. And then on sort of the more product side, we definitely saw a huge shift in the types of products that people were interested in. So, things that related to comfort while quarantining or working out at home, we saw, significantly more demand for, whether that was our performance socks, our t-shirts, things that people would wear just, around the house.
Well, and I think a lot of people are going on hikes and walks and trying to figure out a way to get out of the house now, in ways that they hadn't before, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into our lightning round. These questions are fast and easy, just like marketing with Salesforce. You can go to salesforce.com/marketing. The world's #1 CRM, that is Salesforce. Put your customer at the center of every interaction. go to salesforce.com/marketing. They've been with us since the first episode of Marketing Trends years ago at this point. So we love them. Check them out. Lightning round questions. Kate, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Number 1, do you have a favorite book or podcast that you've been binging recently?
So I just finished the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, who's a science fiction author. She's a Black woman, really engrossing trilogy that also speaks a lot to social issues that are relevant sort of in the here and now.
I haven't heard of it. I'll have to check it out. Sounds up my alley. Do you have a hobby or habit that you picked up during shelter in place?
So yes, yoga, which I had always thought I didn't like, but started doing just 10 minutes a day every morning while my coffee is brewing, and found that even though I'm working out significantly more in COVID, that doing yoga every day has actually really helped prevent injuries.
If you were not a marketer, what do you think you'd be doing?
It's a great question. I loved my time in finance, which I know is probably a super unpopular answer, but I really enjoyed working in the financial markets.
What is your best advice for a first-time CMO?
That is a really good question. I think it's probably to take a minute and reflect on / talk to other CMOs about how big the difference is between being a functional leader and an executive leader. It was a much bigger difference than I had anticipated, and it's been really, really fun to learn. And obviously, I'm still growing into it. I'm only just less than 2 years in, but I think that's something that I think is important to get a grasp on earlier. And I think leveraging mentors is probably critical in understanding that shift.
What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
Well, one that I love to ask in interviews, but rarely get asked myself, is what are you curious about right now?
Yeah, what are you curious about right now?
So I think one of the big things is kind of, let's call it how we got to now. So understanding what are the big systemic, pieces of technology, infrastructure, sociology that really help understand, why things look the way they do today. And that's everything from, I read a super interesting book about sanitation, which sounds super boring, but was actually very interesting, to, a book like Stamped from the Beginning, about the history of racist ideas in America. So really trying to understand the big building blocks of why things look the way they do today in the US.
Kate, that's it. That's all we got for today. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug? Obviously, everybody should check out Bombas. I've given my love is well known, but check them out. Buy a pair if you haven't already. Anything else?
I'm curious what you never get asked that you wish people would ask you.
It's a great question. I should probably have a ready answer for this. I think the thing that I never get asked is that how do you plan to embrace like the outdoors going forward? Because I think that we do so much stuff with screens now.
Yeah.
And like, it's going to be so much more important for like the next generation to do outdoor things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of implication with the outdoors that like, we have to do a lot of things right to make sure that we can preserve the outdoors for future generations. And
yeah.
I just think there's a lot of kids out there that are going to go towards a lot of digital devices, which is great, which is a very good thing. But there also needs to be like very purposeful, like getting outdoors, being bored, doing activities, making stuff up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I like it.
Thanks for the question though.
I'm a huge hiker myself as well, so I completely agree.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, like I don't even like love hiking that much. Yeah, that's the funny thing. The running joke in my family is that like I don't even like I never really liked like I did it for a job, so spent a lot of time.
Yeah, I was going to say that probably kills the joy.
Yeah, totally. It's a lot more comfortable when you can wear like really good shoes and good socks. I will say that, but yeah, no, it's I think it's like the antidote to the screen is figuring out ways to do things that are outside, and I think that's one of the things that COVID places being outdoor seating, outdoor, just like stuff that's outdoors is great. Better for our mental well-being too.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Marketing Trends Podcast is brought to you by Salesforce. Discover marketing built on the world's #1 CRM, Salesforce. Put your customer at the center of every interaction. Automate engagement with each customer and build your marketing strategy around the entire customer journey. Salesforce. We bring marketing and engagement together. Learn more at salesforce.com/marketing.